As I stepped out of my house today, I couldn't help but think of Christian when I was met with the beautiful 70-degree sunshine and just wonder how great it would have been to watch some hockey in some shorts today.
Yeah, I've been looking forward to for the past seasons. I haven't been able to get to it yet, but it'd be nice to walk into the arena, wearing a nice pair of like Nike shorts and then walking out at night and it's like 60 degrees. Don't have to worry about like the long walk to the car. You can park as far away as you want because you don't care. It's nice and warm out. It's not like 30 degrees when you're like, maybe you should spend a little more for parking, but maybe one day if we're lucky.
In any case, welcome back to another episode of the Sabre Roundtable. My name is Jonah,
I'm Christian.
I'm JP.
and as always, we are talking to you about everything Buffalo Sabres hockey and a little bit of the wider NHL. Today's sort of plan or docket, I think we're going to briefly preview the Sabres offseason as a whole. I think we're at the point. A lot of the dust has settled over the past week, especially after the hiring of Lindy Ruff, that we can really take a step back, reevaluate the next month and a half or so is going to be it's going to be a dead period for Sabres news other than if Lindy Ruff makes his additions to the coaching staff, but other than that, don't
Hey,
ex- not expecting anything too soon,
the lottery's in 2 weeks.
except for the NHL draft lottery, which
It's actually in about a week.
yeah, was it May
Oh yeah, I
7th?
guess I guess it's like a week and a half.
It's like
Yeah.
8 days away.
Isn't that what, Tuesday? The 7th?
Might be. But other than that,
We
other than the what
It's Tuesday.
3% chance that the Sabres have at winning the first overall pick, not
Hey,
much is on the horizon.
never say never. When the Sabres got Owen Power, I was on a plane. And I will say, this Tuesday, I will be on a plane again, coming home
Oh, that's
from
good looks.
vacation. So
That's
this
good
could
looks.
be this could be Groundhog's Day. We might have a shot here.
Have I ever talked about on here how I didn't want them to win that pick at the time?
I don't think so. But
I
I
mean,
think a lot of people thought that way.
I think it makes sense.
I feel
Everybody
like
thought he
I
was a little overhyped.
yeah, I think there was definitely a lot of it was definitely a weird year when it came to prospect uh sort of rankings and just the pedigree that Owen Power had. Um, yeah, there was obviously a lot of hate at the time, and I guess I was sipping on some of that Kool Aid. I really wanted Matty Beniers, or I think I don't even think by that time I hadn't discovered William Eklund, so I was either way. I was very anti Owen Power at the time, I guess, but I wanted Beniers, and I didn't want them to win the lottery, and they did, and it's probably the first time where I'm ever like, oh, God damn it, we won the lottery. I hate it.
People would probably argue with you and say that he still is overhyped. I mean, we've made it clear on this show that we don't feel that way. Owen Power, I believe, is a very, very crucial part of this team. And criticize him all you want. He's here to stay for a long time. So, uh, yeah, but I think back on that draft and I think of Matty Beniers and man, I was hoping for that Willie because we had two picks in that draft, right? We had two first
No,
round
well,
picks.
we had we had the first pick obviously, and then they got back into the first round with the Ristolainen trade.
Oh
But
yeah.
that was the unexpected one because what I remember was everybody was talking about, I want to say Reinhardt going to the Blue Jackets, and I think they were at about ninth overall, which is like right next to where Eklund was picked. And then, or there was the dream scenario, or not the dream scenario, but there was talks that the Ducks wanted Eichel, and they had the third pick.
Yeah, I
So
remember that.
those were the two ways you thought you were going to get back into the first round. You did not expect Ristolainen being the key to get there.
It was the right key. It needed to be done. It was so overdue. It was beyond overdue. The day he got traded, I will never forget where I was, and I was just like looking at my phone, and I was just I was like, man, they finally traded him after all this time. It only took them, it was only 4 years too late, you know? They extended him and then immediately after a year or two were like, I don't know if this is the right guy. And, he stuck around. So
Yeah, never forget the days of no, no, no. This coach is going to know how to use him. You just got to get him under this coach.
you just got to get him under the right guy. It's
And
like,
one
I
thing,
don't
one
think,
thing that was constant between Ted Nolan, Dan Bilesma, Phil Housley, and Ralph Kruger, the one thing that those four all had in common, they gave that guy 25 minutes a night and expected to
Yep.
win hockey games.
they
Hmm.
gave that man first line minutes when he was a second pairing guy at best.
Oh my god. Flashing back to 2017, analytics aren't really like a common thing. So you're just going with the flow. You're thinking players are good just out of the own basis of your mind. And I just remember thinking Ristolainen, he's a beast. He plays 30 minutes a night. He's got to be good.
It's got to be good, man. And then you look at the plus minus and then you're like, I don't know. Those are the two big ones. Time on ice, plus minus. That's what every scout
And
should be
come on,
looking for.
and
And penalty minutes.
come on.
That's
There it
come
is.
on.
There it
Hits.
is. Did you see the Toronto Maple Leafs in the Bruins game? They had like 60 combined hits in the first period.
And that's why
It's
both those
insane.
teams are in the playoffs.
Suburban dads in Cheektowaga were going nuts watching that performance.
I need Ryan Reeves on this team immediately. We need that guy on the fourth line playing with Jordan Greenway and Anton Wahlberg. All right. Give it to me.
That might be one of the
I'm
most
joking.
unlikeliest lines that we could have next year.
Greenway, Wahlberg, and Reeves.
Oh my god.
Hey, you know what? I was saying to someone the other night, I was like, you know what? This team, we're built for playoff hockey. We just can't get there. Like,
Yeah.
we're built for playoff hockey.
That is, yeah.
And he was like, you're wrong. I was like, how do you know? Like, I'm not wrong. You're also not wrong. How do you know we're not built for playoff hockey?
You're both right and you're both wrong at the same time.
Yeah. No one's right or no one's wrong.
We'll never know.
We'll have to wait and see.
In any case, we'll be going over to get back to the topic before we went wildly off topic there. We'll be going kind of briefly over the Sabres offseason situation, what they need to improve, what needs to change, what's going to change, and just some other storylines to head into the season. We'll talk a little bit about the Amerks playoff run, and then we get a little bit into the playoffs, which, the wider NHL we've kind of ignored for a period around here because it's been a hectic few weeks. Within those hectic few weeks, Lindy Ruff was named head coach, which we spent all of last episode on. So if you haven't already, go give that one a listen. What we didn't get the chance to talk about was the press conference. Lindy Ruff's introduction. Well, do you call it an introductory press conference? I mean, he's done the whole shebang before.
A welcome home.
Welcome home. Lindy Ruff back as the Sabres head coach, talking to the Buffalo media for the first time in 10 years as the head coach, seeing old friends Mike Harrington and Paul Hamilton once again. As he stated in the press conference, that's why they're the reason that he came back in the first place. But what I'll ask you guys immediately, just reactions, takeaways. What did you guys think about the press conference?
I thought it was, I thought it went as well as it could have. I think Kevin Adams did a good job of defending his stance on how this wasn't going to be a nostalgia hire and how this is going to be, this is meant to improve the team now and going forward. And I believe him. And one of the main reasons I believe him is because of Ruff's track record in the last year. In the short term, he's been successful. So, and it's just an added bonus that he's been here before. And what he did with the Devils. And, he threw a couple jokes at Harrington and P. Ham. And other than that, I had no complaints. I mean, did you guys have any complaints or anything that could have been better?
You brought up how Adams did a good job justifying how this was not like a nostalgia hire or anything. And then you had Terry Pagula introducing Lindy Ruff as the coach, who probably should have a cup. And then you had Ruff going to the podium himself, talking about how Thomas Vanek, Jason Pominville were all texting him about how cool it was he was back as head coach. So I could only imagine what was going through the mind of Kevin Adams as he heard the other two members of the press conference constantly, basically nostalgia baiting, while
Yeah.
he's doing everything in his power to just, guys, please, it's not a nostalgia hire. Leave me alone.
Let me backtrack a minute. The beginning of the press conference could not have gone worse. Terry
That
just
was
went up there and
that
he
was
just
gold.
started rambling about the old days.
That was the first time we've seen Terry in a long time.
I know, it was
for a
crazy.
Sabres press conference, and that was gold.
He just popped out of nowhere. I didn't even expect him to be there.
I knew he was going to be there, and I knew he was going to give a speech, but I don't think anybody could have expected that. Like, everybody was just saying, like, what is this man talking about?
Dude went full old man on us. He was, oh my God. I was listening to it and I was at work and I was laughing at my desk. And I was just, oh my God, this is going to be an absolute field day for the reporters reporting on this. And then Adams, he definitely saved it. And then Ruff, he just did what any new coach did, talked about what his plans were and everything. So it was all very straightforward, except for the beginning 5 minutes.
It's got to be a little comedy. We are in a 13-year playoff
That's true.
streakless or
was
whatever.
Was it two? Whatever. It was a few episodes ago where we were just talking about how, yeah, this team is it's just a parody of itself. It's just it's a comedy at points.
Maybe Terry's just embracing that.
Yeah, I think Terry, maybe he's been practicing his stand-up routine a little bit, brought a little comedy gold to the press conference there. And maybe he lightened the mood. Maybe he lightened the mood a little bit. Got everyone loose, ready to ask questions, ready to talk about the future.
I thought it was, perfectly fine press conference. Gave you everything that you really wanted to hear. I really loved his answer when asked about how he incorporates analytics. I don't think that's an answer that you would get from 90% of the coaches in the NHL, but it's a testament to Lindy Ruff because that's the type of coach he is. He adapts. He was hired in, was it 97? So he's been in the NHL for over the span of 4 separate decades. You got to adapt to the changing times, and analytics are a big part of that. I'm sure they played a factor in this hire with the Sabres behind the scenes, and I think that was just it was the type of answer where you understand why, or at least I hope you can understand why this guy still has something to give as the head coach of an NHL team. Additionally, we did get word about what his contract situation looks like. He signed a 2-year deal.
It's kind of like a bridge. I don't know.
That is a Reinhardt contract if I've ever seen one.
Yeah, they're not locking him in long term. They'll probably leave that option out there, but they know he's old. I mean, there's rumors out there that he was considering retirement. So, we'll see how this goes and see how it plays out. But I think that's probably the right contract to give him.
Yeah, I'm completely happy with that contract. Anything longer, I would have raised an eyebrow at anyway.
Yeah, I think it gives more substance to what we're discussing about Eppert, how it kind of seems like it's moving in the direction he's going to be the next head coach of the Sabres after this. That
could be
2-year timeline. It just kind of, it's long enough to get the team back on its feet, short enough to make it clear that this is probably not the long-term guy. Now, if they win 2 President's trophies, then we can just discuss an extension.
I hope so. That'd be so. Don't even give me hope, please.
Moving on.
Thank you.
Now that that's over with, now that we are safe and secured, Lindy Ruff is the next head coach of the team. Aside from his assistant coaches needing to be, or how many assistants are added to the staff, kept on the staff, all of that. Besides that, we can get into the team. So the Buffalo Sabres, their 2024 summer. What is it going to look like? When I say the words the Sabres 2024 offseason, what comes to mind in terms of what they need to do, what needs to change, or what you think is absolutely going to change?
What comes to mind is change because I really do think they are going to change up the structure of the roster a little, and I think they have to. I think we will add, a significant piece or two for our forward corps, and I think we're going to have a different play style going into next year. I think we're going to be a better forechecking team. It's not going to be all perimeter crap like we've always done, and it hasn't really worked unless we're on like a shooting bender. So I think it's going to be a completely different Sabres team next year. And I mean, top of my list, no matter what, is that damn power play. Like, if that doesn't change, then there's no, there's almost no hope again. Like, that's at the
Hmm.
very top of my list.
Other than being more aggressive than last offseason, um, we look at the team as a whole, and what do we see? We see, oh, they need a third line center. They need a top six winger. They need an additional fourth line guy, right? Maybe some defensive depth. Thinking about maybe like a short-term goalie deal. I don't know. That's probably the least important at the moment, but I feel like in past off seasons we've looked at the roster makeup and we've tried to plug holes instead of bring in guys that could challenge your core players to be better and um try and weasel their way into more minutes. Like you talk about previous off seasons and you see the Sabres, they bring in some, they're not no names, but they're not, and they don't even have to be big names, but they're less talented players and they fill a role and they think they fill a role. And then we look at the end of the season, obviously it's a disappointment. I think the player that could benefit from this the most is Dylan Cousins. If you could bring in another center that could push Dylan Cousins to be a better second line center, that's all I could ask for because no one's sitting behind him right now. And obviously the odds of him slipping down the depth chart with only Krebs sitting behind him as a center isn't very likely. But if you could bring in a guy, maybe on a it could even be a 1 year deal, just to push him, just to have that, have him on the hot seat. Maybe he has to move down to the third line for a game or two. I feel like that's better for our players' development instead of, saying these are the guys, let's just bring in some pieces and hopefully they could help them out. I think you just need day in and day out to be challenging each other and, you know, steel sharpens steel. Is that what the saying is? Or is it iron sharpens iron? I heard it
This
a bunch when like the Bills brought in guys and I don't know. I think that'd be nice.
I think I agree. I mean, you just said like a 1 year deal. I agree. I think the moves they make, I think they're still going to keep them short-term deals. I mean, unless it's like a huge trade. But I think they're going to do that because I think Kevin's plan is still, graduate some of these guys. Wahlberg's been playing really good with the Amerks, Olslin, Kulik. They're eventually, there's a good chance eventually that some of them are going to be on this team or at least given a chance. So I don't think Kevin's going to stray away from that plan. So I think it will be like a short-term deal or two to bolster our team this year, hopefully get to the playoffs, and then, then our guys can carry the load and the some of the prospects can graduate.
when I look at this team from a roster building standpoint, I have to say it feels very refreshing to feel good about the goaltending for once. That's an area because you think about that. That's an area from the moment that Kevin Adams was brought in. Well, I guess I shouldn't say the very moment because Kevin Adams' first season did have Linus Allmark um, in his last season as a Sabre, but even in that season, he was a glass cannon. From the moment that Kevin Adams has really been brought in, it's been a question mark because you've had Allmark hurt, and then your goalie tandem was a blind man and Jonas Johansson. The following season, he had to, he re-signs Dustin Tokarski, and then he brings Craig Anderson out of retirement. And going into the next season, you keep Craig Anderson, and you take a chance on Eric Comrie, which ended up not working out. You rode the Devin Levi, or you rode the Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen wave for about a month, and then you had to ride the Devin Levi wave for about 2 weeks. And last season, you kind of hoped that the goaltending would be fine. It wasn't, but just not, or at least it was just not in the way you thought. But by the time Luukkonen had taken the crease, the team was already spiraling. They were already under 500, and the point is, it feels good. Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen is your number one guy going into next season. Now, the contract still has to be hammered out, which I think we'll talk about later in this episode. But given the team has control and he's an RFA, he's going to be around next season. And Devin Levi is, I would assume, is going to be the backup. And as we've seen, that's a good spot for him, because on the whole, if he performed at the level that he did for the Sabres this season over a full, 30-game stretch as a backup goalie, he played backup caliber performances. And down in the AHL, he's been an absolute beast. I think he's going to be. I think this tandem is going to be good, or at least it feels good. I mean, it can never, with goaltending, nothing is 100% surefire. The position is the most volatile, probably in all of sports. Take Connor Hellebuck, for example. Guy is, without a doubt, the best goalie in the NHL. He's getting torched in this series against the Colorado Avalanche. So goaltending is good. For the first time this summer, we probably will not have to talk about it.
Thank God. We talked about it way too much last offseason.
I do, before we move off of goaltending, because I know you're moving off it, I do think, Lindy already basically said UPL is his number one guy, which is obvious. But I do think that, maybe this is just because he's an older coach, but I feel like he's going to ride UPL a lot. I mean, he did that with Miller. So I don't know if that's like bad for Levi, but I just think UPL might get like 60 games next year if he's healthy. And Levi might not play as much, which some people might make the argument that he should just be with the Amerks again. But I hope Levi can, force his way in the crease a little more. So maybe it is that 50-30 stretch. But I do think UPL is going to be Lindy's goalie, like right off the bat.
Yeah, why wouldn't he be? He's been the best goalie this organization has had since Ryan Miller, according to stats over the last year. It made me eat my words.
Yeah, he did have to, he was riding Ryan Miller a lot during those latter years. But hey, you look at his last 2 years with the Devils, he was doing the opposite. He was throwing a new guy in there every game. So,
because they all sucked.
Well, yeah, it's a good way. Good way of putting it. Apparently, it's his fault, though. That's the thing.
Yeah.
Of course it is. Of course it's his fault.
But moving on from the goaltending, when I look at this roster, I guess if we want to jump to the forwards, in terms of additions, I see it's very apparent that I think the Sabres want to add a bona fide third-line center. Unfortunately, Peyton Krebs was given the chance to kind of take that role by the reins after the trade deadline, and he didn't. Now he was playing with Jeff Skinner, who was not playing good hockey down the stretch, and he's a defensive liability, so it's not the easiest task, but he didn't take that opportunity and run with it. So unfortunately, I think the team's going to be searching for that. And when I look at the rest of that bottom six, I think I want to see two new faces in there. Now, those don't have to be outside additions, both of them. One of them can be Yuri Kulik. But I think this is the first time that they have to re-explore that bottom six. It needs to kind of just be reimagined in a way that goes with Adams, his line of thought that he expressed in his press conference, how he wants the team to be harder to play against, which probably means rougher and tougher, which just for me, just can they forecheck? Because that's what I want, at least from my fourth line. And even if that's the element that the third line ends up kind of adopting as well. When I look at the defense, I think there's one more impact player to be named there. Now, I know there was that report a few months back that the Sabres feel as if they have their top four locked in with Dahlin, Power, Byram, and Samuelson. But, if it were up to me, I think, kind of force Samuelson into that third pair role. Just kind of, don't rely on him to be that fourth guy. If he ends up being that, that's fine. But get someone on Samuelson's caliber that is more reliable and can maybe play more up on the lineup. So for me, when I look at the roster, that's what I see. Give me a third line center, reshape that bottom six. Look for a top six addition if you can, but it's a lot easier to say, add a top six forward than to actually add one. And give me one impact trade, signing, you name it, in that top four.
Adams has said a lot how he wants an identity on those bottom two lines. So I do agree with you. I think they're going to look a lot different, and they probably should.
Get ready for 2 more years of Zemgus Girgensons, buddy. That guy's not going nowhere.
Realistically, he's definitely not.
Well, I guess that's probably a good transition. We can talk, now that we've kind of discussed the roster, what we want to see and what, a quick overview of what could happen. The cap situation, this is probably the first time where you have to start talking about it, because next season you're going to have all four of, I guess, the core four of the Sabres kicking in. Tage Thompson's in year 2 of that contract. Dylan Cousins is in year 2 of his contract. And then finally, you have Rasmus Dahlin and Owen Power. That's a combined $19 million in cap space that kicks in next season as well. So, we talk about off-season additions and what we want. For the first time, you just can't, you can't go after whoever. It has to make sense. There have to be good deals. And for they have to navigate their cap situation, which is something they have not had to do since 2021. So taking a look at the Sabres cap as a whole. So heading into next offseason, this is according to Spot Track, the Sabres have about $21 million in cap space. Now, there are some things to tend to. Most importantly, which I'm going to be following heavily throughout this offseason, what does Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen's contracts look like? What does the next deal look like? Because that can go a lot of ways. And he has arbitration rights. And that's something that Kevin Adams, I don't think, has ever had to go through. And I feel like if there is a guy, I think Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen could very well be the player to bring that to a third party to try to get a deal done, because it's kind of been a rocky path to his rise to being the Sabres' #1 goalie. And I think if the Sabres are looking for a good deal, I don't think he's gonna give it to them. If they're trying to look for like I don't know, if they attempt to keep his number in like the low 3s, I don't think he's gonna play ball.
Mm-hmm.
That's a deal where I think, I really would not be totally surprised if we come down to a 1-year deal here. Now that wouldn't be my final guess, but I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility. Now for me, I think something along the lines of 3 or 4 years seems more manageable. But that's where the AAV gets interesting, because you're probably talking about getting into the 4s, and with a rising cap and having to buy UFA years, it gets maybe closer to 5. And that's even that has a lot of risk, because UPL's only put on one stellar season at a very volatile position.
I would say 3/4 of a stellar season.
Yeah, and you still have his successor right behind him. I mean, everybody knows Levi's the guy.
You're always trying to bring him down, man. Let it end. Let it take a rest.
I'm the guy that always tries to bring him
down.
I was gonna say.
I feel his performance with my hate. I know he listens to this episode.
But UPL's contract situation is definitely going to be the one to sort of, that's the big one. They gotta nail it, because that's your guy for next season. And hey, you never know what happens with Devin Levi. UPL, he might end up being the guy. That's if the guy we saw last season is more of the same, then you got yourself a franchise goaltender. Other UFAs to discuss. Victor Olofsson. Zemgus Girgensons, Tyson Jost, Eric Robinson.
Jurgensen's will be here, but the rest, see ya.
They're all gone.
I don't know about Girgensons.
I was gonna over the past like couple of weeks, it's become a little more apparent that I've gotten a feeling that they might actually not re-sign him just because of Adam's sense of urgency and his sense of change. Obviously, that could change in a minute when if he signs, but his offseason feels different.
I also think that to say that Kevin Adams kind of attacked the Sabres' accountability would be a bit of an understatement. Even the players basically undermined the pyramid scheme of leadership in their locker cleanout interviews. I think it'd be weird. I don't even think did Girgensons even talk at locker cleanout?
I didn't hear him.
I mean, he's that's your assistant captain, and I'm guessing a lot of it. I'm sure the media requests people, so maybe that's what's playing into it. But I don't know. I really I agree with Christian. Like it feels like over the past few weeks, it's kind of felt like a shift there.
I'm pretty much just gonna reiterate what Adam said when he was questioned about a lot of just questioned a lot about it after the trade deadline. Aren't you just gonna be looking for like the same exact player and the same exact traits that he has? Like, I don't know. I mean,
Yes,
I get seeing new faces, but aren't you're gonna be looking for like the same type of player?
I also think I think for one, those traits aren't hard to find. Um, and I think B, I think there has to be a new leadership core next season, and I think I don't think they would if he comes back. They're not going to rip the A off his sweater and hand it over to Tage Thompson. I think that would be kind of awkward. He's been wearing that A for, I mean, geez, was he rocking it before this
It's
little
been a
rebuild
long
here?
time. Yeah, it's
Might
been
have
a
been
long
dating back
time.
to like I don't know Kruger's first season. I don't know.
Yeah.
I think there's a real possibility that he doesn't come back now more. I'm more confident in that than I think I've been in years past. But I think looking at the other UFAs, I think I would assume. Well, we know Victor Olofsson. He will not be. It doesn't look like he'll be returning to the Sabres, much to JP's disappointment. But
Hmm.
Tyson Jost, I would assume, probably goes elsewhere. Eric Robinson's interesting because I think there's worse 13 forwards to have out there or 12 forwards, whatever you want to do. I don't know. I wouldn't be opposed if they bring him back on a short-term deal.
I mean, maybe if he's like a scratch type of player, sure, but I think you could find better options out there than Eric Robinson.
And Eric Comrie, I think we all know, has probably played his last game as a Buffalo Sabre. If the last 4 months of action were anything to go off of, where he got like 2 starts.
Hmm.
Before we probably say goodbye to Eric Robinson for good, saw someone tweet this. And this is, kind of with some Donnie hate in it, but everybody remembers how good Byram was his first few games. Eric Robinson was great his first few games too, and then they started practicing. Like everybody was in love with Eric Robinson at first because he was awesome. He had
He
what
was
a
real good
hat
those
trick.
first few games.
Yeah, and Byram was the same, and get a few practices in their belt, and they learned Sabres hockey.
Yeah, I was laughing at I think it was one of Lance Lysowski's articles, and it was just about Byram, and I think the quote from the article was like, he was talking about how like he just had such a strong start. He's just playing off instincts and what he already came to know, and then he got more practices in, and he had to go off of what the system asked, and we found ourselves with the last month's version of Bowen Byram, which was not great. Moving on. So the other sort of big looking at the RFAs besides Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen, Peyton Krebs, Jacob Bryson, Henry Jokiharju, Cal Clake. I guess you can throw Riley Stillman in there as well. We'll start with Peyton Krebs. What does his next contract look like?
2 year, 4 million, maybe 3 million, maybe.
Oof.
I think they're still going to give him a chance. I think to win, not to win a spot. He is a spot, I think, in the lineup almost no matter what. But I'm saying I think they're still going to give him a chance to win that third line center position. Like you guys are saying, we need a third line center. I agree. But I think you bring in someone at the very least who he can compete with and see if he can take over that position. Because, you never know. Like Lindy coming in might be a big boost for him. So, I think they're still going to bring him back. I don't see him leaving anytime soon. Like I know some people have said, trade him. I don't see it. I think they'll give him at least one more year chance in an actual, hopefully, like offensive role.
I I agree with you. But I also think that if the right trade comes along, you move on from him.
I don't think he's like any value though. Like I don't think like if it's we trade a first and Peyton Krebs, you're not going to get that much for him.
Yeah, that's true. I feel like we tend to overvalue specific players sometimes just because like we watch them every night. But
Do you think, like hypothetically speaking, do you think who has the most trade value? Do you think Peyton Krebs, Ryan Johnson, or Isaac Roseanne?
I would say
um
Roseanne. I think at least he's really produced at the AHL level.
I would probably say out of those, it's probably Peyton Krebs just based off of the fact he's played the most NHL games.
Those were just names that sort of came to mind when because JP was talking about trade value, and I'm like, it's like how much would like how much would he have, and how much does he have to guys relative like someone like Isaac Roseanne? Do you think Kevin Adams would rather dip into the reserves for an upgrade, or would he move on from someone on the roster like Krebs or even like Ryan Johnson? I bring him up because I kind of feel like he's like a sleeper trade candidate. I I think he doesn't have a place in this lineup. Or I mean, he does, but he doesn't in the sense that um, he would have to play in that third pairing role. But he's a left-handed defenseman, and he's young, and I don't know. It doesn't feel like he fits what they need right now. So I kind of view him as a potential trade piece. But that's just me.
I don't think he's been lighting it up with the Amerks either. I know I saw
He had a
that
bad giveaway last night.
yeah, he had some bad plays. But I think who's got the most value that we haven't mentioned, and I think we all know, Yoki. Like I think we all think he's on the way out, and I think he has some actual value.
Speaking of Yoki Haru, as JP said, he's the next RFA on the list. It really, all indications, all reports have kind of seemed that Yoki Haru is on the way out. Yeah, he, because it makes sense. His qualifying offer is, I think, it's pretty high. This is a guy who um, doesn't play a huge role on special teams, and he's able to play up in the lineup with guys like Darlene and Power, but it would be a really expensive cost to try to keep him around in the service of maybe making a more higher upside addition. So, a contract for him would probably be in the fours, I would assume, which, like I said,
mm,
like that's high. That's high.
nah, you're not giving him
Um,
that money, man.
even if it's even if it dips down to like 3.5, like that's I don't know.
Still too much.
I still think that's a bit much for what he provides. So he's seemingly on his way out. Jacob Bryson, what does his future possibly entail? Because I think you talked to us 3 months ago, and I think Christian specifically is driving him to an airport.
No,
To
that's JP. That's
Is it
JP.
JP?
That's JP.
I wasn't as
JP's
bad
the
this year.
Bryson. JP's the
I
Bryson hater.
I wasn't that bad this year with any players, to be honest. But in the past, okay, last year, absolutely. Well, I guess 2 years ago now, absolutely. But I wasn't even that much of a Olafson or Bryson hater this year. Let's be honest.
Well, in Bryson's case, there was not much to hate on because his last few months were really, really good. I think, at least for that stretch, sort of in early March, late February, early March, he was playing really, really good. I think he kind of tapered off as the season came to a close, but he's a guy that I don't like. I wouldn't mind bringing him back, but I also think he's at the point like he's making $1.8 million this year. He's going to be your seventh defenseman this next year if he stays, and that's too much. That's a guy that you can absolutely should be able to just give him league minimum. So maybe there's a scenario where they ignore the qualifying offer, let him slip to free agency, and re-sign him at a cheaper cost, sort of like they did with Tyson Jost on day one of free agency last season. But it's not a guy I would hate bringing back. I think it almost ties back into the Ryan Johnson conversation. I think with those two it would just be weird to have both of them on the roster. I feel like they kind of supplement the same role and responsibilities. So, if Ryan Johnson stays, then Jacob Bryson would go for me. And if you want to use Ryan Johnson as trade bait, that's fine. And you bring Bryson back, I'm not totally opposed.
Yeah.
I agree. I think it's one or the other, and I kind of think those two actually might be players who are going to kind of be hurt by the system change. Like I think they really fit into Granato's system and play driving and getting it out of the zone, and I'm not sure that they will fit in as much with this system. Maybe I'm completely way off the mark there, but I think they really fit into what Granato wanted out of them. And that's why Bryson did so good last year.
Cal Clegg and Riley Stillman, sort of the last two, I guess, NHL implicated RFAs. I don't think, there's nothing, I don't think what doesn't happen with these two, it's not going to affect the roster too much, but I think it's worth bringing up because they are both guys, or at least Cal Clegg did play NHL games this year, and Riley Stillman was a pretty solid defenseman for the Amerks, so I wouldn't be surprised. My guess, I think maybe Stillman sticks around, and I don't know, maybe Cal Clegg finds a new home.
Yeah, that's all toss-up stuff. That's housekeeping.
So, with all the like Christian said, all the housekeeping items out of the way, I did want to bring up the conversation. Kevin Adams likes to get a jump on contracts. And this offseason, there's probably four guys that you could reasonably see Kevin Adams going after and attacking their contract situations early. Bowen Byram, Devin Levi, JJ Peterka, Jack Quinn. All four eligible for extensions on July 1st. Do you see any of those being done over the next few months prior to next season?
I would say it would probably. I feel like he has bigger fish to fry at the moment. I mean, of course, you got to take care of your in-house guys, but I would hope he starts by attacking free agency and looking for a trade before talking about extensions with current guys. But if there's one guy that gets done like pretty immediately, it'd be JJ Peterka. It was unfortunate that Jack Quinn had the injury he had. I really believe if he was healthy all season, he would have had just maybe as good of a season as JJ did. Unfortunately, that wasn't the case for him. And I could see his bleeding more into maybe like the season or into next off season, depending how the entire season goes. And that would also probably go for Byram. I could see that. I could see Quinn having a similar situation to Byram, and I think Levi's more the wild card. I think that might depend on how many games he plays, how much of a role player you think he really is. Obviously, if you're going to sign UPL, I'd say he's probably more likely to go next off season too. But I would say the one that gets done pretty quick is JJ's.
I don't think there's any reason to do Byram until he gets a full season under his belt. Levi, I don't think so either, but it also does depending on the UPL contract. And I think one of Quinn or Peterka will get done. And I think I'm kind of leaning towards Quinn actually, just because it's before he breaks out. You could probably get him for cheaper. And if Peterka bets on himself and he's going to be on the top line with Thompson and Tuck the whole year, he can earn a lot more money next offseason. So I think, I mean, I hope we sign, I hope we extend Peterka now because I think he's going to be even better next year, but I think he might bet on himself. Where Quinn, I mean, he's already had some injury issues. So I'm leaning towards that one maybe happening the most.
I think Bowen Byram, Devin Levi, those are two contracts that they do wait on. I think Byram, you really don't know what he's going to be. And Devin Levi, you have a much more important fish to fry in Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen. The Peterka and Quinn conversation is interesting, and JP, you bring up a good point. How, if you're JJ Peterka, why would you sign now? You were arguably the team's best player last season, at least from start to finish. And A, you probably think you still have more in the tank. And B, the team didn't really treat you as one of their best players the whole way through. He didn't get on the top power play unit till the end of last season. He didn't get a look on the top line until late March and thrived once he got there. Yeah, if you're Peterka, I like, the Sabres are probably coming at you with if it goes to 7 or 8 years, which is what Adams has shown to like doing, you're probably talking in the sevens, and with a rising cap and with UFA years probably being bought at the end of it. If you're Peterka, you're like, nah, I'm gonna wait. I'm gonna bet on myself. I'm gonna give myself a full season, hopefully playing with Tage Thompson and or Alex Tuck, getting looks on the top power play unit and playing hopefully for a playoff caliber hockey team. And then we'll come back to the negotiating table. But yeah, Jack Quinn would be interesting because maybe there's a bit more of leverage there. He's dealt with more injury issues. He's a player that plays up and down the lineup, has really never gotten that full-time look on the top line and probably won't next season. It's at least a player that will probably be more open to going to the negotiating table and seeing what the team wants to offer already and just getting a head start on that. So the other thing is those two have been a package deal so much throughout their careers, getting drafted in the same draft, their first full seasons in North America, both being at the same time, both of them excelling, both of their rookie seasons in the NHL being the same year, and likely this season you would have had both players breaking out. But obviously that timeline was sort of disrupted with the Quinn injury. So I think that's also, I don't know if it's a factor at play, but it kind of feels like they've always just been so closely tied to one another that, I don't know, maybe their contract is just another example of that. Maybe their final numbers are an example of that at the end of this as well.
I mean, Peterka, he finished with 30? I don't think it's unrealistic at all if he got to like 40, 45 with how well he played at times last season. And the only thing I disagree with you with is I'm not sure I would be too interested in giving out another 7 or 8 year deal contract. I mean, then it's almost like half your team's locked up for that long. Like I would be more interested in like a 4 or 5, like, or maybe even like, when we were talking about mid extensions, something similar to that, maybe.
That's an interesting, it is, yeah, it's a good point to raise because we're probably not going to see too many of those anymore. I think maybe there is like one more left in store. I don't think, for example, I don't think Devin Levi is going to get an 8-year deal. I really don't. Quinn and Peterka, Bowen Byram is probably not going to get a long-term extension. And Quinn and Peterka, maybe one of them does. I would guess both don't. And honestly, you've started to see that in the wider NHL. Guys have been taking shorter-term deals to, I don't even know, it's just a bet on themselves, but to just set themselves up for free agency.
I think eventually they will do it again with the forward group. But I mean, maybe my hopes are just too high, but I think that's maybe when you make your huge splash. Like if it was, Pettersson, we would have signed him. If Kaprizov or I don't know, whoever else comes available. I think if you're gonna make a big extension and pay a good amount of money to another forward, it's got to be someone like a top line player because we already got Tage and Cousins at what 7 years, 8 years, it's 7 million each. So I think the next time we see a deal like that is if or hopefully when we make like a big splash.
I also think that this is something we brought up before, but I think given the discourse that has sort of happened recently around this player, would definitely play into that contract situation. Jeff Skinner still under contract till 2027, the summer of 2027. So you still have 3 more years giving that guy prime money, and it. Hopefully, it works out to the point where you don't have to worry about getting that contract onto someone else's payroll. But maybe it doesn't. Maybe the last 13 games where he went scoreless. That's an indication of what's to come, and having that sort of roadblock in the way of Quinn and of Peterka's maybe mega extensions or bringing in another piece, as JP said. That's going to be the storyline to follow when these contracts inevitably do come to pass. I'm going to be watching. I know me personally, I'll be watching Lucas Raymond. I feel like that's a contract situation that's going to be solved this summer that is going to have implications for, especially for someone like Jack Quinn, but even Peterka as well, because they went in the same draft and he had the breakout that Peterka similarly had, and what Jack Quinn might replicate next season.
Yeah, I think the Skinner conversation is so interesting. If I were to put money on it, I'm not sure he ends his contract with the Sabres. Like I think I'm not saying it's this offseason, and maybe it's not even next offseason, but I feel like at some point, if this play continues, like I don't think he's gonna be on the Sabres for the rest of his contract. And I think that's somewhere where you save a lot of money once you need to. Um, and it's already a discourse on Sabres Twitter. Like in almost every mock trade, it's like, yeah, let's trade Skinner for Tavares. I mean, that deal was awful, by the way. But there's all these people talking about Skinner and buying out his contract. I think something will eventually happen.
I don't think it'll be this off season though.
Yeah, I agree, but I I think the conversations might start rumbling.
Yeah, I think A, he's just too loved in that locker room, and B, I just think if it were to happen, he'll have to force their hand. He'll have to have a really rough season where everybody can say, hey, this guy is clearly, we've given him the opportunity, and he just hasn't performed up to what he can. It's not a situation where he, back in 2020 or 2021 where he's playing on the fourth line and everybody's saying he sucks and it's the worst contract in the league, but it's like, well, he's playing with Curtis Lazar and Riley Shahan. What what's he supposed to do?
It would really hurt if we did get rid of him and then we finally made the playoffs because he would be sent to a team who's probably not going to make the playoffs. That would actually really hurt though.
So that's the Sabres sort of cap outlook heading into the offseason. As we said, about $20 million in cap space. Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen has to be figured out. Peyton Krebs has to be figured out. Henry Jokiharju the same, and some of their pending UFAs, along with potential additions. Before we get off the Sabres, it is a topic that we sort of discussed earlier, but I wanted to bring it up one more time. Lindy Ruff, who are you most excited to see him coach? And who do you think can get the biggest boost out of Lindy Ruff being the guy to sort of challenge them?
I would probably say Dylan Cousins. Um, Especially after the year he had. I think he could really benefit from just a coaching change and maybe like some sort of a system change. Um, Whatever could boost his scoring numbers back up to what it was that 22-23 year, because I know he was on, somewhat of a unsustainable bender, um, statistic wise, but he could hit those numbers. I think he just needs the right coach behind him to push him to that point.
I agree. I think Cousins is very likely because I think he can be a really good forechecker, and I think that's what we're going to emphasize more. And I do think Krebs, I think will also see a boost in this system. I think those two mainly. Then if we want to go defense, I think Samuelson. I mean, Jonah's already said this, but I think Samuelson's kind of might see his role change a little. So I think those are the three players that might benefit the most of you know Ruff's system and how they're going to be utilized.
Dylan Cousins is definitely the player I'm hoping that he challenges the most because I think that's when you looked at last season and you saw the struggles he was having, and he was saying all the right things off the ice, but it just was not translating, and it just didn't seem like anybody else but himself was trying to give him a kick in the ass to get him going. And I think Lindy Ruff can be that guy to just on a night to night basis be like, hey, like it's all there. You have whatever it takes. You can score in this league. You showed that. You scored 30 goals a season ago, and you can be that matchup center like you've done over the course of your first four seasons in the league. You got to do it on a night to night basis, and you can't get away with not being like that night in and night out. And I think, this is a guy that a year ago, I wouldn't have been surprised if he was pushing Tage Thompson at points to be their best center. And, this season, obviously, he didn't build upon that, and he didn't take a step where he needed to. It's not even like in the case of Thompson where, okay, he had this big step back. The defense saw a big improvement. Cousins was still the same lax defensive player as he's been. And on top of that, you had seemingly a very non-committal offensive performance night in and night out, except for a few separate instances.
I miss the Cousins who was shut down McDavid.
And it's not to say, like, I don't think he's some Selke caliber player in the making here. Even when he's matched up against guys, it's more along the lines of, hey, he's just driving possession. He's keeping the puck out of their hands. They're going after a matchup center this offseason. At least that's what I think they're doing. Cousins, if he's your matchup guy, but he's the guy who can drive offense and be a more can he just be a more responsible player? That's what I want from him. That's what I want from his line. And I don't know. I just really think that Ruff, if I want Ruff to attack one guy's mentality and framework going into next season, I want it to be Dylan Cousins.
I would also appreciate if he didn't try and dangle his way through every offensive zone entry. I think that would be a huge, huge step up in his game, considering he never did that last year. I mean, 2 years ago now. And that was pretty much his only move. And that it didn't work out for him like at all.
Underrated, but I think one player that I sort of am looking forward to seeing under him, and he's the guy, so it shouldn't even be, I guess, a conversation, but I feel like Dahlin is just gonna love him. I don't know what it is. I just have this feeling like he's just gonna love Ruff's type of play and mentality. And I remember Ruff talking about on Sabres Live when they were scouting the Sabres. The guy he brought up, it wasn't Tage Thompson. It was Dahlin. Like, he knows what this guy does, and he knows how this guy thrives off play. It just seems like a player that he really understands. So I just think he can help take Dahlin to an even greater level than before.
I also wonder what Tuck. I mean, he was pretty much known as more of a power forward archetype before he came to the Sabres. So maybe he kind of returns to that play, becomes, more of a forechecker, not as much finesse. Um, but yeah, I wonder that, especially, I mean, kind of playing for like his childhood coach too. So I think he's gonna have a lot of extra motivation for that.
All right. Before we shut things down here, a few more things to talk about. The Rochester Americans are in the midst of their playoff run. Currently, they are in a tied series 1-1 with the Syracuse Crunch, headed back to Syracuse. They win game one at home. Anton Wahlberg scores a dazzling goal for his first North American playoff goal. And then Noah Osland gets on the board a few minutes later with his first goal as an Amerks. So exciting stuff out of game one. Levi stood on his head. He also gave us probably the quote of the year that I will not repeat on here. All good vibes from game one. Now, game two, on the other hand, unfortunately, the Amerks go up 2-0. They do not keep that lead. Syracuse scores 3 straight. Then Mason Jost ties it late in the third, but the Crunch win one in overtime after a pretty shady icing call. So that series is far from over. The Crunch are looking to get revenge from last season, where Lawrence Pilot put the dagger into their hearts and ended their season.
Lawrence Pilot.
That's all he wanted to say. He just wanted to say his name.
Hey, I don't think I ever mentioned on the pod, my roommate got me a Lawrence Pilot card. Like, he's really into cards. I got it on my nightstand. It's been there since.
God, that's just.
I did.
Which pilot is this? Like a rookie card? Is this a?
It's an Amerks card.
Oh God,
I'm not sure which number.
Makes sense. It's the team he spent the most time with.
You couldn't even get him one in a Sabres jersey.
He's a legend there.
Not much games to go off of.
No. I know you briefly mentioned him, but Wahlberg's been so impressive. I mean, I hope he's with the Amerks next year. I mean, he brings something that this prospect pool doesn't have. And the fact that he just came right over to the United States and is playing this well and making an impact, it's really impressive.
I would say that we have to get out to a game, but our as JP and I were discussing the other night, dating back to 2019, we are winless in Rochester Americans playoff games. So maybe we should stay away. Let them do their thing.
Stay far away.
Hey, they got to win this next game. And this is a huge game, like, obviously just for the Amerks, but if we want to talk about, like, developmentally for some of these players, it's like, I want to see them on a long playoff push. You want to see Levi carry them, and Savoy hopefully comes back over and, adds to it. It's a huge game.
Mm-hmm.
Bit of unrelated, but I'm like 90% sure that the Hershey Bears are going to repeat as champions today, because I don't know if you saw, but the Washington Capitals sent down they got 6 new players today that were all on the Caps playoff roster.
Is that why the Hershey Bears are so good every year? Do the Capitals just send down their players?
They're already an older team, but I didn't even think like LaPierre and I always pronounce his name wrong, Miroshnichenko. They're like they're good players. I don't know. So that should be fun. Plus they run the trap, which is awesome. I hated watching those conference finals games last year. They just shut it down every game.
Yeah, but we all know the main reason they were bad is because Savoy was put in the lineup. So
he's also doing very well in WHL playoff action.
Yeah, he is.
So, moving on from that, before we wrap things up, let's talk a bit about the playoffs. Right now, we're recording this on Monday night, and as I head over to Twitter, the Tampa Bay Lightning have been eliminated by the Florida Panthers.
Got smacked 6-1.
Future Buffalo Sabre Steven Stamkos now might hit the market.
Just played his last game as a Tampa Bay Lightning, and I remember we wanted him the offseason we signed Kyle Oposo.
Terry almost got him the first time. He might do it this time.
He was ready to put the money out, man, but nope. That seems like an eternity ago. I remember the post they made for him. It was like 8 more years in Tampa Bay for the captain or something, and now it's already been 8 years, and I feel old.
It made me feel old. If we want to jump over to the Leafs series, how people were talking about like Mitch Marner only has 1 year left on his deal, and I'm like like I know he signed a
Holy
short-term
crap.
deal, but it's like I think he signed 5 years at the time, but it's like Jesus, like it feels like yesterday that thing was signed.
I think it was
That,
6, like
or
6 by.
Tavares. What doesn't Tavares only have a year left? It's like, dude, I remember him signing for 8 years like
It was a 7
yesterday.
by 11. He signed the old
Yeah, that's right.
7-11
This
deal,
7-11, yeah. Oh man.
and
You
they
want to
just
talk about
they can't seem to
you want to
figure it
talk
out.
about a team that is in shambles? Wow. I mean, that was definitely the first time you've seen their core like that. William Nylander telling them to stop crying, that this isn't juniors. Mitch Marner throwing gloves on the bench. It's you've never seen their core like that. Like, this is the first time where I feel like there's been true frustration.
I hope they get
Blow it up.
eliminated tomorrow because I don't want to see them go to another. Each time that the series has gone this way with them in 2013, 18, and now, well, I guess if it repeats, it was lose game 1, win game 2, so it's 1-1, and then they lose 2, so they're down 3-1, and they make a comeback to game 7, and then they lose in Boston. I'd rather skip that part and just have them lose in Boston tomorrow night because not only will they be eliminated because, we all hate the Leafs around here. But it'll just add that extra emphasis that this just isn't working. They couldn't even get back to 7 games like they've done in the past. Massive step back from what they got last year, what they accomplished winning a playoff round. The Sabres still have more playoff round victories dating back to 2004, which is sad, but because we haven't won one.
On so many levels.
We haven't won one since 2007. So, I mean, Leafs have made the playoffs, the last 6 years, last 7 years?
Yeah, plus 2013. It's not a great time to be a Leafs fan, but talking about how we were just talking about like their contracts finally being up, they can't even maximize moves anymore. Like we've been talking about for years, like hey, trade William Nylander or trade Mitch Marner, whoever it is, and get that big piece. And it's like you're not. I don't think you can trade Nylander now. You just signed him another 7 years for $11 million.
Another 7-11.
And even Mitch Marner, who, that's probably gonna be the guy they end up shipping out because there's just, I mean, I think if you mention the name Mitch Marner and just in the center of Toronto, you might get jumped. He has 1 year left on his deal, and a no move clause, so you can't even, like, they're just screwed. And I think it's a big part of why they've run it back so many times. They're kind of like hamstrung because you're definitely not trading Matthews. Marner has the no move clause. Nylander's probably the guy that they probably could have moved on from a long time ago, but he was the one that always showed up in the playoffs. And John Tavares, like you can't move that contract. They just, I don't know. And it's really just unfortunate luck. Like every year they run into a wagon. 2017, their first year in the playoffs, they lose to the President's Trophy winner. The next season, they lose to the Bruins in 7 games, hard-fought series. The next year, they lose to the Bruins, who went to Game 7 of the Cup Final. 2020, they lose to the Blue Jackets in the qualifying round. That one was pretty funny. They probably should have lost that one. But the next year, they lose to the Habs.
Hilarious.
But the Habs first,
That was awesome.
hilarious, hilarious. But even the Habs, they went to the Stanley Cup Final, and then they lose to Tampa the next year, go to the Stanley Cup Final, and then they lose to the Panthers, who go to the Stanley Cup Final. So
you you have to beat the Leafs, and you're going to the Cup Final.
it really is. It's both like they haven't had guys take over a playoff series. Like, look, Austin Matthews is incredible. And it's not even that his playoff numbers are bad. But has he taken over any of these series?
Has he had a point yet?
I mean, and I think, and that's the thing about this year. Like, I think all their guys are hurt. Like,
Yeah.
Matthews dealing with a sickness. Nylander dealing with migraines. I mean, you can't F around with those. And even Mitch Marner, I wouldn't be surprised if it comes out he's hurt. It's just, when you have 7 years of playoff failure on top of that, you don't exactly get benefit of the doubt from the wider NHL.
You lose patience, yeah.
it just doesn't. It doesn't feel like Nathan McKinnon and Kel McCarr, for example, tearing up that series against the Winnipeg Jets, tearing it up, or even Connor McDavid, Leon Draisaitl, or Zach Hyman dominating that series against the Kings. It just feels like they haven't had like a dominant performance by any of those players in these past however series.
So the only reason Zach Hyman's doing so good is because his parents are rich.
Time to blow it up. We're gonna see a different team next year in the Leafs, which might
It's gonna be
mean
different
I mean,
because
for their sake, I'd hope so.
I would also assume like Sheldon Keefe probably gets the boot.
yeah.
Oh yeah. I think Brendan Shanahan might get the boot too.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Brad Treliving being their GM. What if that team gets Daryl Sutter?
Oh. Oh my god.
I don't even think he's a bad coach. I just think it would just be such a mishmash of personalities. It would be fun to watch, but it is never a dull day in Leafland.
Nope.
Hopping a bit more around the first round, the Washington Capitals surprising absolutely nobody and getting swept by the Rangers.
They were so bad, dude. Everyone needs to dump on that team. I don't know how. Everyone should be dumping on us too. I don't know how they got in. They're so bad.
They've got to
Nothing
be
else
up
to
there
say.
for one of the worst teams to ever make the playoffs.
Bar none.
Yeah,
Ovechkin,
I saw
absolute ghost out there.
I saw Jay Fresh put out his chart of like all their micro stats this year, and it's just red, red, red. It's all red. Like they were not a good team. How did they get here? Like,
Luck.
that's so. Uh,
All the other wild card teams just being bad. That's why. We were bad. They
Yep.
were bad. Penguins are bad. Red Wings are bad. We're all bad.
I mean,
Devils are bad.
The Red Wings were easily gonna just cruise into that spot until they decided to lose like 13 of 16 down the stretch. So yeah, I guess they were bad. I mean, they were good, but I loved everyone at the end of the season with the Red Wings going like, "Oh, they should have been in. That sucks what happened. Torts shouldn't have pulled the goalie. It should never have gotten close to what it needed to get to with them. They stunk in March. Just god awful. So bad. So it's like you can complain all you want, but it's like it's the same thing with the Sabres 2 years ago when they lost 8 in a row. Oh, if they won one, they would have made it in. Yeah, but guess what? They stunk. It is what it is. And, crying to your pillow. I mean, you have it you made the playoffs 25 years straight before 2016. Now you haven't made it this is what, year 8 now?
yep.
Well, we're going on year 14.
If the Red Wings or the Penguins somehow win the draft lottery,
Ugh.
I will riot.
Well, they
You
can't.
know what?
They can't win the first
you know
pick
what?
though.
I will defend Red Wings fans at least for this, because how many years did they finish last place? I think the Jack Hughes draft, I think the Lafreniere draft. I also think they were like second or third for the Power draft. They, they
They
did
just
not
didn't
have good
win.
lottery luck.
They
They
did
did
not
not have
win.
good lottery luck.
Fair
So
point.
They
I'll
got
defend them with
fourth
that.
one year. They dropped 3 spots.
Yeah, that was the
one
Jack
year.
Hughes year, I think. I think they
Yeah.
dropped to fourth.
And who'd they
Fair
take?
point.
Raymond?
Jack Hughes. Was that when it's? I think Sider was 29th. So maybe no, because Sider was like what a 6th overall pick. Must have been no. It was the Lafreniere draft. I'm pretty sure. So
Well, that's
imagine
probably a
that.
blessing.
Imagine that the Sabres, like let's say that it's the Darlene draft, and they
Oh,
lose the lottery to a team that had it that was in the playoffs essentially.
oh God. Because they lost the Red Wings lost the lottery to who again?
New York. 'Cause
Oh
it was
yeah.
it was the Lafreniere
Yeah.
draft.
Yeah, they jumped up a bunch of spots.
Yeah, not great. Jumping over to the West, the Dallas Stars and the LTIR Vegas Golden Knights. The Golden Knights have a 2-1 series lead. They're playing right now. God, that's so annoying. Mark Stone scoring the first goal of that playoff series. So poetic. Like you just can't write it. It's just
Mhm.
so good.
I hate that team so much. I don't need to do any explaining. I've explained enough on these podcasts how much I hate expansion teams.
It did kind of surprise me hearing the stat that Eichel was the fastest American-born player to, what was it, 30 points. I feel like that shouldn't be a stat, but apparently it is.
30
Uh,
points in what?
I think just the fastest American-born player to get there.
Oh,
in the playoffs.
Yeah.
hmm. How many of those are with the Sabres?
Uh,
He was kind of invisible in the
Yeah,
playoffs with the
yeah, I
Sabres.
forgot the one series in
it's
like
like he wasn't there.
2017. Yeah, he was
It's like he
pretty.
was.
I think he was hurt.
It's weird, dude. You see all these former Sabres players doing great in the playoffs.
But
That's
when
why
they're
I'm.
all when
I
they're all on the
was.
same team, I guess it just doesn't work, right?
That's
just
why I'm saying we were built for the playoffs. Look at all these teams playing good.
God.
speaking of Sabres tearing it up, middle stat mode has taken Colorado by storm.
Yes. They
He's
call
been
them
great.
hot mitts,
But
which I like. We never thought of that.
I will say though, this is the type of series where it feels like everybody's scoring because what the Avalanche scored 6 goals in game one. Game two was what, like 4 or 5 goals. Game three was like a 4-2 win, and then last night was what, a 5-1 win. So everybody's scoring. Everybody's scoring. But Middlestad is doing pretty well over there, which I think I remember giving the heads up that that was going to happen. That he was going to be playing important games, and it was going to stink. All right, wrapping things up here. How is Nashville losing that series to like they're down to like their third and fourth string goalies, and they
Oh,
oh my god, dude, like could you like because we don't have recent playoff experience. I can only imagine the pain that Nashville is feeling. Colton Sissons hitting the post
oh,
on the empty net, and Vancouver goes up the other way and ties the game.
the beautiful
Oh,
game.
oh, that sucks.
How can you not
Yeah,
be
it
romantic
hurts.
about hockey?
Hit the post
Brutal
flush
stuff.
too. Came
Brutal.
right back out.
And it hurts because I've been calling that upset. I said Nashville was going to upset them, and they come
Just
on.
collapsed.
Oh my god. Terrible. I mean, what? Vancouver won a game. They had what? 12 shots on net?
Yeah.
How? How? Brutal
Beautiful,
stuff.
the beautiful game.
Brutal
That's all I'll
stuff.
say.
And then you got the Kings, who not looking too hot either. The McDavid Oilers looking to steamroll them for the third year in a row. A little bit Leafs and Bruins light over there.
Here, Luc Dubois. Garbage. Stinky. He's got one goal in how many games? What is it? Game 5 already?
Game four. Game four.
He got 1 point.
$8.5 million.
Yeah. Worth every he's at $8.5 million per goal. Per point.
Remember when we all wanted him?
Thank God.
Nope, not me. Wasn't me.
Okay.
If only he would have came to the Atlantic. If only the Habs ended up getting him like they were preaching for a year. That would have been
Yeah.
nice.
That would have been good.
All right, so first round basically wrapped up, or at least we're getting there. Who are your cup picks?
I'm not going
Um,
to deviate. I'm sticking with the Stars. They're going to come back and they're going to beat Vegas.
I hate myself for saying this, but I'm saying it's the Bruins. I'm taking the Bruins.
I don't. I think. Well, my preseason pick was was it Oilers Devils, and like the Oilers are looking really good.
Mm.
This might be the year I think they break through.
This might be
But
maybe a if it's not the Bruins, I'd say like a Panthers Oilers final might be.
yeah, I was thinking Panthers too. They just look like Bob's doing the same stuff that he did last year. I mean, geez, that save he made has to be like the best in what, the last 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
Unreal. And he's replicating what he did last year, and the team's better on top of it. I don't know. I will not buy into the Carolina hype. It's not
Never.
happening. That team is fraudulent,
Never buy
And-
into the Carolina hype.
and they will win the cup. because I just said that.
Speaking of another playoff series, Buffalo Bandits going to semifinals. They're on to the semifinals, second year in a row, looking to repeat. That game, I wish I was there
Would have
because
been
it seemed
electric.
absolutely electric. They were tied 9-9 with 5 seconds left, and they got it down, all the way down, gave it to Dane Smith. He scored, and then they overturn it. And then they go into overtime, and Josh Byrne is just cold as ice, and he's insane. But hey, they're looking for another championship push, so go out and support them. I think they start their series this weekend. So
Yeah. Hey, four wins away.
yep.
But with that, I think that's going to wrap up this episode. If you want to follow us on Twitter, follow us at the Sabre Report. Follow us on Instagram at the Sabre Report. Subscribe to us on YouTube. We've seen a big influx in viewers recently. Follow us on TikTok. If you want updates for the pod, follow us at Sabre Report Pod. Go give our friends over at the Buffalo Sports Talk podcast a listen. The three of us cameoed on their draft night special, which was day one of the NFL draft, which was not so special because the Bills did not make a draft selection. But
It was still a lot of fun, though.
I was going to say some interesting things did still happen that night. So stay tuned for their post-draft sort of recap. I'm sure that'll be coming out soon. But I think otherwise, looking ahead here, still got some potential content to pump out some episodes. We still haven't gone over our preseason draft take or our preseason takes. And I was also thinking it's probably a good time for a Q&A. So maybe we'll do one of those next time, and that's something to look forward to. And who knows, maybe we'll get into some draft stuff. I don't know. We'll see how up to it we're feeling.
Hey, once we win the draft lottery, we'll have a lot to talk about.
Do a good old draft profile on Macklin Celebrini.
Maybe we won the lottery.
In any case, until next time, once again, thank you for listening. Feel free to leave a review. We'll see you guys next time. Go Sabres.
Go Sabres.
Go Sabres, go Bandits.